Welcome back to the channel. Today's story is sending shockwaves across Africa, America, and the entire global stage. Former U.S. President Donald Trump has been left furious after Namibia's president announced the expulsion of U.S. citizens from the country. Yes, you heard that right. Namibia, a peaceful nation in southern Africa known for its vast deserts, rich wildlife, and growing resource sector, has just taken one of the boldest steps against the United States in recent history. But why did this happen? What exactly triggered Namibia to push Americans out, and how is Trump reacting behind the scenes? Stay tuned, because in this video we're breaking down the backstory, the hidden motives, and the global consequences of this dramatic move. Let's start with the breaking news that has shaken both Washington and Windhoek. Namibia's president didn't just casually announce the expulsion of U.S. citizens, it was a defiant, fiery, and carefully calculated decision. Standing before Parliament with the nation's flag behind him, he declared that Namibia was entering a new era of sovereignty. His voice was firm, his words pointed directly at Washington. For too long, foreign powers have come to our land, taken what they wanted, and left our people with scraps. That era ends today. We will not tolerate interference, exploitation, or disrespect. Namibia will be governed by Namibians, not by outsiders. And with that, he ordered that U.S. citizens tied to government contracts, mining operations, and political lobbying be given 48 hours to leave the country. The announcement stunned not just the Americans living there, but also Namibians themselves. Imagine being in the capital, Windhoek, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, when suddenly news breaks that the most powerful country on Earth has just been told to pack its bags. Crowds gathered in public squares, some cheering, some shocked, others worried about what this would mean for the economy. For context, Namibia has always had a reputation for stability and diplomacy. Since gaining independence in 1990, it's been considered one of Africa's quieter success stories, a nation that avoided the coups, civil wars, and political chaos that have plagued some of its neighbors. The U.S. and Namibia have maintained cordial ties for decades, with cooperation in energy, conservation, and education. That's what makes this decision so dramatic. Namibia is not a country known for radical, headline-grabbing moves. So when its president chose to confront the U.S. head-on, it sent a powerful message. Even the most stable African nations are no longer willing to play by Washington's rules. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment announcement either. Sources inside the Namibian government say tensions have been building for months. Negotiations with U.S. companies over mining rights had collapsed. Accusations of political meddling by American NGOs were making headlines, and rumors swirled that Washington was pushing Namibia to choose sides in the growing U.S.-China rivalry. So when the president stood before the nation, this was the culmination of all those frustrations boiling over. And by expelling U.S. citizens, he wasn't just making a diplomatic statement, he was drawing a line in the sand. To understand why Trump is so furious, we have to rewind. During his presidency, Trump's relationship with Africa was complicated, to put it mildly. He openly prioritized U.S. deals with Asia and Europe, often sidelining Africa in trade negotiations. At one point, his administration even attempted to cut funding for African development programs. But the real tension came from Trump's tariff wars. He imposed tariffs on certain African exports, uranium, beef, and minerals, that directly hurt economies like Namibia's. For a country that depends heavily on natural resources, this was seen as a direct attack, and if that wasn't enough, Trump's infamous off-the-cuff remarks about African nations created widespread resentment. While Washington tried to downplay them, African leaders remembered. So when Namibia finally decided to strike back, expelling Americans was not just about economics, it was also about pride and sovereignty. Another key factor, U.S. companies. Over the last decade, several American corporations moved into Namibia, especially in the uranium, oil, and diamond sectors. On paper, these investments promised jobs and development. But according to Namibian officials, the reality looked very different. Local communities complained of low wages, environmental damage, and profits flowing straight back to the U.S. Namibia's president accused these companies of operating like mini-colonies within the country. And here's the kicker. Washington was accused of pressuring Namibia's government to give these companies special treatment, tax breaks, land access, and resource rights. For Namibia, it was the final straw. Expelling U.S. citizens, particularly those tied to these businesses, was a way of saying, enough is enough. So how did Trump react? Behind closed doors, insiders say Trump was livid. He reportedly blasted Namibia's decision as a betrayal, and called the president's actions a disaster for American business. Publicly, Trump went on the offensive. He posted on Truth Social, accusing Namibia of being ungrateful after years of American aid. He also claimed that this decision would cost Namibia millions of dollars in lost opportunities. But the fury didn't stop there. Trump's allies in Washington began calling for retaliatory sanctions, including cutting off trade with Namibia, freezing assets, and even suspending development programs. In Trump's world, this wasn't just about Namibia. It was about sending a message to any other African nation thinking of defying Washington. But here's the bigger story. Namibia's move is part of a wider trend. Across Africa, countries are increasingly pushing back against Western dominance. From Nigeria to South Africa, leaders are turning toward China, Russia, and regional blocs for economic and military partnerships. China has invested billions in African infrastructure, Russia has signed defense agreements, and now Namibia is showing that even smaller nations can stand up to U.S. pressure. This reflects a new African confidence. For decades, African countries felt they had to bend to U.S. and European influence. Today, with more partners available, they're willing to chart their own course. So, what happens next? For the U.S., losing access to Namibia isn't just about business, it's about strategic resources. Namibia is one of the world's top producers of uranium, essential for nuclear energy. It also has untapped oil and gas reserves, plus critical minerals used in smartphones, electric cars, and military technology. By expelling U.S. citizens, Namibia risks shifting these resources toward China, Russia, or even regional African companies. And that terrifies Washington. Economists warn this could be a turning point. If Namibia succeeds in standing firm, other African nations might follow. That would mean less U.S. influence, fewer trade deals, and a shrinking role in the continent's future. Of course, Namibia is taking a huge risk. Expelling U.S. citizens could trigger sanctions that hurt its economy. American companies may pull out, leaving behind unfinished projects. Aid programs might be suspended, affecting healthcare and education. But Namibia's president seems confident. He's betting on new alliances with China, Russia, and even Middle Eastern partners who are eager to invest. In his words, when one door closes, another will open. Namibia will not be bullied. It's a bold gamble, but one that could either catapult Namibia into a new era of independence or leave it isolated and struggling. At the heart of this drama is a bigger question. Why does Trump clash so often with African leaders? Part of it is style. Trump's tough-talking, America-first approach doesn't sit well in regions still scarred by colonialism. What he sees as business, African leaders see as exploitation. Another factor is trust. Trump's history of sudden policy shifts, imposing tariffs overnight, canceling deals, slashing aid, makes African governments wary. They prefer partners like China, who offer long-term projects without political lectures. Namibia's decision is a reflection of this mistrust. For them, Trump represents a U.S. that doesn't take African voices seriously. So how are ordinary people reacting? In Namibia, many citizens celebrated the move, seeing it as a stand for sovereignty. Social media lit up with hashtags like #NamibiaFirst and #NoMoreExploitation. But not everyone agrees. Some worry that expelling U.S. citizens will scare away foreign investors altogether, leaving Namibia poorer in the long run. Meanwhile, in the U.S., Trump's supporters are rallying behind him, accusing Namibia of anti-American hostility. But critics argue that Trump's own policies created this mess. So what's the future of U.S.-Namibia relations? Experts say it depends on whether Washington chooses punishment or diplomacy. If Trump and his allies push sanctions, the rift will deepen, possibly driving Namibia straight into China's arms. But if cooler heads prevail, there might be room for negotiation. After all, Namibia still values foreign partnerships, it just wants them on fairer terms. For now, though, one thing is clear. The U.S. has lost an ally, and Africa is watching closely. Namibia's decision to expel U.S. citizens is more than just a diplomatic dispute. It's a symbol of Africa's growing independence, and America's struggle to maintain influence on the continent. For Trump, it's a personal humiliation. For Namibia, it's a bold gamble. And for the world, it's a sign that the global balance of power is shifting, one country at a time. So what do you think? Was Namibia right to stand up to Trump in Washington, or will this backfire and hurt its people in the long run? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into global politics. Until next time, stay informed.